this journey of addiction, but it also shows us like this person that's inside all of us that wants to get out and wants people to see. And I'm glad that we got to show that for Chris. And I guess maybe that was that helps me in my recovery because, like he wasn't able to complete that and do that. I can for both of us, really.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Finding New Waters. My name is B. Reeves. I'm the Director of Business Development here at New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Sitting here with our CEO, Justin McClendon, and our very special guest today from Madison, Wisconsin, and recovery.com, my new buddy, Tom Farley. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, we are. We've had a lot of fun this summer. So, thanks for, I'm happy to be on here. And,
glad you're here, man. And so you do some podcasting, right?
Yeah. I've done some hosting before. I've done a lot of podcasts. I'm really good on this side of it. Asking questions, it's hard. But I was doing a lot for recovery.com. But two things happened. First of all, I'm traveling everywhere, doing so much outreach. And the second is my co-host, Brittany, got really good. and I didn't need me. And so I may step back here and there for an interesting guest. But our podcasts are going really well. Recovery Cast is one of them. We have several of them. But it was interesting being a host.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Right before I saw you in person in Madison, a friend of mine I went to college with at the University of Georgia, who will remain nameless, obviously, but she had come to New Waters, and we helped her out, and I hadn't seen her in like 20 years, and she's been doing great. And she said, I was on recovery.com podcasts. And I was like, that's unbelievable. That's amazing. Because I guess they had come across her somehow, some way, and they interviewed her for her own story, which was just so cool. And another full circle moment, which, my life is so full of these days. Yeah.
Well, all I can tell you is, we started out with these really amazing guests. So if she's part of that, people that we've already talked to, it's been amazing. Our person that finds these, our social media guru, has just hit it out of the park.
That's awesome.
And, we're having amazing discussions with people that are either new into the recovery or down the road a bit. So the fact that one of them, one of our guests who had this great story, started there says a lot about New Waters, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Well, so I know a little bit about recovery.com, where, I just came up and I spent time with you at your own conference. And in Madison, I was lucky. I'd never been to Madison. What a beautiful, beautiful place. And so how did you end up in this spot, and how'd you end up getting sober? Give us a little quick backstory.
Oh, man. I thought I had a nice career going in New York as a marketing director and being all creative, but I was the typical, we had a long family history. We had, I'm Irish, I grew up in Wisconsin. Yeah, that was a really perfect storm. But then of course this life event happened, when my brother Chris, overdosed very publicly, my brother being Chris Farley. And, that was a surreal experience. And I was very lucky in that the first thing that came into my mind is, I got to talk about this. I got to, deal with this grief and this loss. I knew I had to talk about it, but there is that addictive kind of mindset in me that said, I also want the attention, and keep that going. So to be really honest, there's some ego in that too. But I did that. I went out and talked about Chris's story and trying to help other people. And I developed some really interesting, innovative programs for teens and young adults, and thought I was doing really well. But again, it was somebody else's story, and I would have these bouts of sobriety because I would say like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this work and continue to drink like I did, or maybe I should just not drink anyway. And so I would have bits of sobriety, big chunks, like 4 or 5 years, thinking that that's all I needed to do. And yet I was still kind of not going anywhere and having problems. And I thought it was I just had to stop drinking. And I would go into, we wouldn't go into, all the minor stuff, but basically when I moved back to Wisconsin, I had started doing work with teens and their IOPs and people in treatment. And that was really, I loved going from prevention to treatment. For some reason, I felt more kind of, that was a better place for me in treatment and recovery. But I wasn't there myself. Skip forward a bunch of years later, a friend of mine who I had done work with, a clinician that I'd done work with before, we became good friends. She called me up one day and said, just to connect, how you doing? And I said, like, I'm doing great, because at that time I got tired of the same old thing and I stopped drinking, which is the only thing I knew how to do. I said, I haven't had a drink in 4 months. Expecting a lot more applause than I got. And she said, well, that's fantastic. She said, let's have coffee. I'd love to, and let's connect. I'm like, God, I would love that connection. And she said, great, well, let's meet Saturday morning, 9:00 in the basement of the Presbyterian Church. I'm like, oh man, I know where this is going. But this was this person who had helped so many people in our community. I'm like, how do you say no to that? It was kind of my first higher power that I surrendered to. I said to Shelley, my friend Shelley, I'm like, okay, I'll go. And instead of hearing when I had gone to meetings before and saying, oh, that person drinks more than me, I don't need to be here, I started hearing like, wow, I've had broken relationships like this person. I've had job loss like this person. I'm like, this isn't about drinking, is it? Like I had this all wrong. I just knew that I found out that I had to be the clarity of sobriety to do all of these wonderful things. And I haven't looked back since. That was, almost 7 years ago. Yeah.
Love it.
That's amazing.
Well, to just sort of tie a personal note on this, I in 2008, I was living in New York. I'd been living there since 2004. And I was a fan of Chris Farley big time, and part of me, I think, kind of without ever admitting it, was like, I kind of want to be like this. And, he had already died when I was living there. I mean, and I was heading that direction without the fame and fortune. I think without not having the fortune and the fame kept me probably alive more than I realized at the time. But anyway, somebody gave me a book for Christmas called The Chris Farley Show. And, I read it immediately, and back then, I mean, it was kind of a feat for me to read a book just because I had other interests and my priorities were so out of whack and couldn't really focus and all that. But I read this thing in, a sitting or 3 probably, and just remember thinking like, this is unbelievable. Because I knew how amazingly talented and funny he was, but
absolutely
learning all this kind of backstory about what a benevolent, sweet guy he was. And, I don't even think I've told you this, Tom, but when I thought about that a little bit more, I think that reading that book, which I later realized was written by you, Tom Farley, kind of helped me on my sobriety journey more than I realized, because knowing that dichotomy of him being so extreme and kind of loud and boisterous and funny, but also having this very sweet side that, he didn't publicize, I think that all of that, I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. But anyway, the book was amazing for so many reasons. And then, we had sort of met, I think I met you very briefly at Global Exchange right before the hurricane got us all evacuated, but we'd never really talked. And then when I was going to this conference, I saw that in the write-up about you that you had written that book, and I did not know that until very recently. And so we got to talk about that. And yeah, just talk about that side of things if you would.
Wow, man, I got to tell you, if I had written that book personally, it would have been completely different because I didn't know I was carrying around so many things like you do when you have somebody close to you that has an addiction. You carry with you all, and all the emotions, anger, frustration, sadness, hope, all that kind of stuff. And I had that all bottled in with Chris. But the way we wrote it was we interviewed all people that knew Chris from growing up in Wisconsin to going to college at Marquette to Second City in Chicago, SNL and Hollywood. And through these interviews, I realized, oh my gosh, these people knew Chris more than I did, or they saw things that I couldn't see because, I started out having to share a bedroom with Chris. So I carried that trauma with me. I like to say I have a better relationship with Chris now, since he passed away from this book than I ever did when he was alive, because I was able to separate the addictive brother to this brother that I love. And that's been a journey too. And, what similarities between Chris and I, have. And, so yeah, that was an amazing journey. And, to support what you just said, like it was also named way back then by BuzzFeed as one of the best books for young people in recovery. Cause it does show it shows, this journey of addiction, but it also shows us like this person that's inside all of us that wants to get out and wants people to see. And I'm glad that we got to show that for Chris. And I guess maybe that was that helps me in my recovery because, he wasn't able to complete that and do that. I can for both of us, really.
There you go. I love that.
I think that's true, though. I mean, what you just said just kind of struck a chord with me because I think there's a lot of truth in that for a lot of people, especially, individuals that are struggling with substance use. Is exactly that. There's kind of like these two people, right? It's kind of like, the person that is, or there is maybe the addiction or the face of the addiction, right? If we want to call it that. And then there's typically like this other person inside, right? This person that, has morals and values and cares about themselves and other people, but it just tends to get kind of tampered down, I think, because of other things become more important.
Yeah. One of the favorite things I like to say is, it was true for me. Like when I started really kind of seeing that, and absolutely was true for Chris, is that we could be in the middle of a bar, let's be honest, in the middle of a bar, surrounded by people, center of attention, making everyone laugh, and not feeling more like we were standing on the surface of the moon.
Yeah.
Like why? Like I will give the people what they want, who they want me to be, and what they expect. But it's not me. I know that. I don't know how to show them that. They don't want that from me, but I want them to see that. And for so long, Chris and I think both struggled with that. And in recovery, I don't have to do that. And actually, one of the things that I like to say is when I started to really work on recovery and realizing that I was putting this person out to the world that I thought they wanted me to be, that I needed to be. And I started to work on things like gratitude and rigorous honesty and humility. And I started to really, dig deep in those areas and realize that like the person I was putting out to the world, that person could never be grateful or truly or rigorously honest or even humble, because that wasn't a real person. That wasn't me. Only I can be that person, and I'm not showing them that, people that. So now I get to show this authentic person who's doing all these things, being rigorously honest, being grateful, being humble. And I mean, I'm suddenly getting the connection that I desperately wanted and trying so hard for, and not achieving it. I'm getting it now.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I've never really thought about it like that. How that character, Mike, somebody was talking to me yesterday, and I kind of used the word mascot to describe the way I was when I was in college and in my 20s and even early 30s before getting sober. I mean, and that person, that persona rather, doesn't have a soul, and is was incapable of having humility and gratitude. Just like you said, that's such a great point. I've never thought about it exactly like that. And, I just thought of this too. I mean, the title of the book, The Chris Farley Show, was also the title of that show on Saturday Night Live.
It was a skit,
where he kind of played like that really sweet, sheepish, innocent version of himself, which I guess was probably like that, real person we're talking about here, right?
Oh man, I had never thought of that. It
That's
was an easy connection between the skit and, but like, yeah, it was a show. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It just like I had my show.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and then I guess the double entendre would be like the Chris Farley Show, that I'm out there,
that's
what
showcasing the mascot, that persona. But yeah, I mean,
that's neat.
Yeah. Well, so you, I want to get back to the book in a minute because there's some other news around that. But so you, we've talked about this. You went to boarding school in New England like I did, and we had some similar stories there. And then you went to Georgetown, right?
Yeah.
What were you like in college?
So I went to Georgia. It was one of these things like, I'm, named after my father. My father went to Georgetown, so I had to go to Georgetown, and he was a businessman. I'd be in business. I admired all these things. So I thought I had to do these things, and getting into Georgetown was one of them. But once I got there, I'm like, do I really belong here? I mean, like, I always thrived, surrounded by really smart, overachieving people. I was motivated by that, but I was also like, I'm out of my depth here. What was interesting is, I like to say, I 1 year prep school, out in Rhode Island, I learned, like, that was my entire high school career. But I moved back to Wisconsin for my senior year in high school, and it was such a cakewalk. So I went from like I loved the rigor and the intelligence and the curiosity, but it was a little overwhelming for me. I felt like a fraud. And I got back to Wisconsin, and I just sailed through effortlessly with just, my grades went through the roof, because it was like I already, I did the high work. I coasted because, I felt, I don't know what that, I just, it was easier for me to feel like, this isn't, I don't need to compete. This is easy. But then I went back to Georgetown and went right back to that. Like, so I would fall back on what I was good at, which was humor. Everyone loved me. I was very fun. And, I'm from Wisconsin. So, I took it upon myself to show, them what a professional drinker looked like. And so, I leaned on those two things instead of this intellectual curiosity that I thrived on, but it scared me. So I fell back on laughter and drinking.
Yeah. And then you moved to New York and worked in finance, right? And you were kind of like an Upper East Side New York guy, right? And then all of a sudden you have your little brother who's on Saturday Night Live living in the city. I mean, what was that like?
Well, that was fun, for both of us, certainly. And again, what was I doing in New York? Like in finance, I hated math. But I loved the look and feel of it. All my friends from college were up there. So it was kind of like, one of the first things I heard in recovery in the rooms was actions before results. And I was living my life like, no, I want the result first.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do the actions for that. I wanted to be, on Wall Street. I wanted to be in the Upper East Side. I wanted the bigger apartment. And I never had that. And I always, but Chris came in, and again, it was just, I went to the shows. It was fun. But again, I was kind of, I kind of put the fear and the hard work that I was, that the fear that I was experiencing and the hard work that I was avoiding, Chris distracted from that, and I got to have fun. And we did. We had a lot of, it was really interesting. But it was also really, Chris was always my little brother. So even though he was making 10 times my salary, I was like, I'm the king of New York, dude. You don't replace me. But I stopped seeing him as this little brother, and I started to like, man, he knows his craft. Like he really, I was impressed. But I guess if I'm honest, not at first, because I saw him just getting paid for doing stuff that he was doing when we were kids. Mm-hmm. But there was this moment at the end of his career as SNL that he was in recovery. And that's when I was really seeing him for the first time, so many different ways. And I didn't know what it was, but it was different. And I saw him doing just amazing stuff. I didn't realize till much later when I got into recovery, I'm like, that's what it was. I was seeing somebody in recovery.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, he just, I know we want to talk about all kinds of stuff, but while we're still on the subject, the book, you've
New York Times bestseller, by the way.
Yeah, but I hear you, as it should be.
I mentioned
plug for a book that came out in 2000.
There you go.
I hear you. But what's the news on it?
Well, it was great is that finally we sold the book rights. We had an auction a couple years ago. I've been talking to this actor who's an amazing guy. Always like just grew up like one of these kind of Chris Farley nut jobs that but he went from wasn't just the putting on the Matt Foley imitation stuff. He actually it inspired him to be an actor, and a great one by the name of Paul Walter Hauser. And so we started to form the team and put this thing together, and New Line bought it, and we're kind of waiting for the final green light. I think the director is going to be Josh Gad, who's just amazing, funny guy. And this is going to be his first time directing. And I think he's finishing up. They're doing a reboot of Spaceballs.
Yep.
So he's in that. And once he's done with that, I think they want to start working on this. And again, it's going to be what I love about it. Again, people ask me about the movie. I'm like, that's not my world. But this finished product, I see it as a tool for the recovery community. All the stuff that we've been talking about, even here today, how it can really inspire people to make that leap. See their story and Chris's story, their journey, and finish it up with okay, this can have I can create the happier ending that Chris never got.
Well, exactly. And his legacy to continue to live on and be a teacher and both a cautionary tale and, kind of like we've talked about, that dichotomy of that, that innocent human who does have a moral compass and does do the right thing, but sort of overtaken by that persona,
Yeah.
I am extremely excited for that movie, man. Oh my God.
I know.
It's going to be amazing.
And what I love is Josh was like, he didn't want to do this kind of, Chris is born and, this whole farm to table kind of movie. He wanted to, he said, there's this 5-year period when he was just leaving SNL, top of his game, in recovery, just talent, exploding out of him, to also this period, the same period with all these demons, and he moved to LA and kind of lost his connection. He became a commodity. And I mean, there is this 5-year period where you see just Chris at his best talent wise, and all the demons. And if that's the movie, yeah, it's going to be, some flashbacks, showing, his older, smarter, uptight brother.
I was about to say, who's playing you? Clooney?
No, I'm afraid to even ask. I'm afraid,
yeah,
that's exciting though. I'm really looking forward.
I'm excited for what we can do with this in the recovery world that we live in. It's right now I'm going out there telling our story, my story, but this is this can just really expand that to, get people, maybe push them over the line. All right, I gotta do this.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta live this life in recovery. Between Chris's story and my story, we can do this. And how do I do it? Well, places like this, recovery.com, there's, it also shows, it can shed light on, there's some great places, that to find recovery.
Yeah. Well, I realize I'm wearing a purple sweater in honor of our interview with you being at recovery.com. Tell us, for the people listening.
Is that your Wingfoot sweater? Are you wearing your Wingfoot?
It is. Yeah.
I thought
I'm flexing.
That, yeah.
What will you tell us about what recovery.com does exactly?
Oh man, what's really neat is it started out as this, a research, a resource page connecting people. It's patient focused, finding the right recovery, because our founders saw just, first of all, the directories out there, some are good, most are problematic. And there's just so many hurdles and so many barriers. And it's let's make this, a little easier for people to find the treatment they need. But then they had this opportunity to buy the domain name recovery.com. And this is where I came in. I sat down with them when I was, trying to think this might be the next stop for me. And these two founders said, we bought this domain name and it helped our business model and our vision, helped us understand our where we want to be, but all of a sudden it hit us. We have to be recovery. We have to honor recovery and be recovery. And now it isn't just matching up to treatment. It's just all this other stuff that recovery is. What do we do? This rest of life kind of journey that continues for us all. And so we're desperately trying to, it's a great resource, the content that we're creating. You're starting with the podcast to articles on, what is this therapy, people are talking to me about, or what does depression really look like? We did one that just came out recently, yesterday, on just all the things that we do before we get into maybe I'll just do the strategies, the failed strategies.
Yeah.
All right, I won't drink liquor, I'll just drink beer, that kind of stuff. So there's wonderful resources, what I love is because, when you're you don't choose treatment, people a family says you should do this, a doctor says do this. And finally you come to this, okay, that's surrender moment, but you're still not taking real control of it. And recovery.com with all these resources gives people agency again and control. This is what I have. This is who I am. This is why I do things. And this is why treatment is the right thing for me, because I know it's the right thing. And I love that part. That ownership and agency that people have going into treatment. I think it really, and finding the right treatment, the success rate just goes to the roof.
Yeah. Then everybody I've met, Tom being a shining example of that, everybody at recovery.com, from the people who arranged the conference, to the CEO, to my sort of personal Sherpa, Ryan, that week, all the presentations, the way they took care of, I mean, and the people are, everybody who needs to be in recovery is, and that this is not just like a, I mean, I could see how at first people say, oh, recovery.com, it's just a directory, but they are a wealth of knowledge, and they're all very helpful in doing this for the right reasons and doing it right. So, I mean, anybody out there listening who's just curious about anything, just recovery.com. There you go.
Well, on a personal note, like what blew me away, I've been in some really toxic cultures. I worked on Wall Street. But even in treatment, it can get, we do great work for the clients, but yet, it's internally, it's very stressful. Therefore, it can go off the rails. And it's a roller coaster. But I came in, and not everyone here, it's a tech company. Not everyone is in recovery. Actually, it's, probably a smaller percentage of the whole. But, I remember walking in and doing a Monday morning meeting, what are we gonna, what is our strategy? But no, we started the meeting like with gratitude. Like, let's go around the room. What are we grateful for over the weekend? I'm like, wait a minute. Are you kidding me? In business? Like all these principles that I've learned, just add connection to my life. Now I have it where I work. It is crazy. Like I remember being in one meeting where one of my colleagues was talking about this wonderful moment he had over the weekend with his kids, and he got emotional and started crying, and I was like, oh my God, on Wall Street, you're toast. You would have been dead. You pack your desk right now. But everyone had the opposite. It was like, I felt connected to this coworker because of that. And I'm like, the sense of belonging just explodes. Yeah. So
Amazing.
It's I talk about that culture more than anything. And it's a recovery kind of, very strong foundation in recovery principles. And, why can't we live like that? You don't have to, you don't have to have an addiction or something, to be in recovery, just to get this recovery. You can live this way.
I hear you. Absolutely. And you made me think of two things. One, when I first started reading the recovery literature, when I got home from treatment or in treatment, I just remember thinking, God, everybody needs this. The other thing is, Justin and we do work at and for a treatment center. But not everybody at New Waters Recovery needs to be in recovery, and they're not. Plenty of, nurses and other employees. However, every morning we do a reading from some kind of recovery literature. And I kind of always am on the lookout if anybody is sort of over it or thinks it's, but no, everybody absolutely. Cause it's not like it guarantees everybody to act great and the day is going to go smoothly, but it sets the tone, and it certainly helps.
It sets the tone.
Go ahead.
Just another quick comment on that is that, like, I do the same thing. I sometimes am just scanning the treatment team room and like, is anybody in here kind of like, oh my God, we got to read this again. But yeah, it makes everybody just kind of stop for a second.
Yep.
Just think. And like, if it does literally nothing else than that, then it's a job well done, I think,
Yep.
Well, I started my career, I'm sure you did too, with this concept. We still kind of talk about it, this concept of work-life balance. Right. Like you're at work and you're this person, then you go home and you're this person, and you got to find the balance between the two to be normal. And I always struggle with that because, I'm not two people. I'm one person. And so the places, companies, families, whatever, that are able to accept you in as your whole person, as your complete person, that's belonging. So companies have been missing that, I think, for years. And you just talked about, like, that's what you're talking about, is like accepting people for, like, bring in all of you. I want the same person that here at work that goes home. Like, I don't want you to change. I want all of that, and I want to embrace that. And oh my gosh, when you like understand that about the people around you, and know that my strengths can help your weaknesses, and yours strengths can help mine. oh my gosh, we're all in this together. Amazing things can happen. So
Yeah. What makes the world go round, I think. Right?
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. We talk a lot in the rooms about, normies. I'm like, I don't want to be like them. Like, I don't want to be like that. You can call them normal all you want, but like, I was trying to be that my whole life. And I'm like, no, I want to be this.
Well, I mean,
You
this
know,
is,
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure the only field, or, I don't like to use the word industry, but where it's a plus to be a alcoholic and an addict, which, good thing I found it. And, I just reminded me when you said something early on, when you talked to the woman who eventually took you to your first meeting, and you said you were 4 months sober and you were expecting, a parade in your honor. I was 4 months sober also, and I went to go meet a headhunter who was a family friend of a friend or something. And it was also, this is a great lesson in anonymity. And this guy had my resume, and he was looking over it, and my resume is, some would call it interesting, maybe even a little checkered, but he's looking at it and said, "Oh, okay. Wow, this is, oh wow, all right, this is great." And then I looked at him and said, "I'm also 4 months sober." And he kind of peered over the resume, said, and I was expecting, like you said, him to be like, "Well, oh my God, congratulations. I've got this whole special category of great jobs, well-paying with great benefits for people who have 4 whole months of sobriety." He looked at me and he said, "Okay, do you have that under control?" And I remember thinking, okay, I'm glad this came out here in this environment,
Yeah. It's such as I said, if you look at my resume, the word that comes to mind would probably be privileged.
Yeah.
I didn't achieve this, I just got this. And a statement like that, which I've made too, like I said, it is a statement of privilege too. Like, this is what I've done, basically with a lot of people's help, not me. And a lot of ego in that. And, that's why, people don't want that. And so now, like, yeah, I've taken that out of my life completely.
You said something else too at the beginning of this that I just thought of again. And you said, you learned in recovery that results and then action before you just wanted results with that. I mean, that's how I was. I felt entitled to an education, a career, a well-paying career, a relationship, a social life, all of that with little to no effort. Just give me.
Should be given.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
And I didn't want any help. I wanted handouts, and then until I got sober, basically, and now I can, if I'm not spiritually fit, I can start leaning in the direction of gimme without the work,
It's funny. And my side of that equation was like, you want me there. I am a gift to your organization.
You're welcome, right?
Yeah. Like, everyone else is like, uptight and serious. Like I'm going to add levity and humanness and fun. Like, okay.
It's like the mascot thing again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a good as place as any to wrap it up. And I mean, recovery.com is where you work at. I don't think there could be any more obvious way to find a company, but any other ways we can find you?
Yeah, well, look at go on and see our podcasts. We're doing a number. One of them is obviously Recovery Cast. You can find them on, all the platforms, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube. But we also do one called Giving Voice to Depression, which is extremely popular and really well run by my colleague Terry McGuire. We do one that's focused on professionals, clinicians like like yourselves. Like, all right, what are your, how do you run a great treatment center without, like, I mean, we all have this, like, we got to fill beds because that keeps lights on. I'm like, man, I know that's a reality, but it takes you away from your mission.
Yeah.
We know it, and we think we're going to do it for a little bit and then come back to it. But so that's perfectly natural. But we have a podcast that really kind of delves into some of those. How do we avoid those things? How do we do the best we can? All those kind of things. So
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and also for everybody out there, I mean, the Chris Farley Show. I read that book 10 years before I got sober, and it did have more of an effect on me then. I mean, I knew I loved it because I was am a fan of Chris Farley and the interviews that you were able to capture and all this, but it was, and hadn't thought of it specifically in terms of being a recovery kind of adjacent book, but it definitely is. And, we all look forward to the movie, The Chris Farley Show.
Yeah,
that'll be
absolutely.
Fun. Yeah.
Keep our eyes out for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're going to do some really, I mean, as I said, it'll shine a light on the work that we do. And that's, sometimes that's the last, it's the final kind of thing to get people like, all right.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, Tom, it's been
one of the things I just said, because one of the things I thought in recovery is like, oh my God, I'm not going to have any more fun the rest of my life. Then I thought like, you're not going to tell Farley you can't have fun anymore. Like recovery or not recovery, like I'm going to have fun. And I'm actually having more fun than I ever did in my life. So that myth is, I blew that out of the water.
Yep. I feel the exact same way.
It's amazing.
All right. Well, hey, Tom, thank you. And
yes, thank you, Tom.
I look forward to seeing you out here on the road soon. And it's been great hanging out with you lately. And I look forward to many more opportunities to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. Good to see you all. And then thanks for just doing some amazing stuff. And
you too, man.
I can't wait to come and tour and see. Yeah, that's coming too.
Absolutely.
I'd love to have you.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you, Tom.
All right. See ya.
If you liked what you heard today or just want to know more, give us a call on 919-670-8119 or visit us at newwatersrecovery.com. Thank you.